One of Asia's deadliest and longest-running conflicts may have just come to an end, as Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which grants partial autonomy to the Muslims in the south after a 5-decade war. 150,000 have died in the conflict between Moro Muslims and the government of the Philippines. But for Moro Muslims, it's part of a centuries-long struggle for self-determination. The Moro minority makes up 5% of the population of the Catholic-dominated Philippines. Islam was first introduced to the islands in the 14th century, and trade with Brunei, Malaysia and Indonesia led to the establishment of Muslim communities which fought two colonizers. First the Spanish, whom they resisted from the 16th to the 19th century in one of the world's longest anti-colonial wars. Then the US annexed the Philippines, including the Moro areas of Mindanao and Sulu. When the nation gained independence in 1946, it included the territories inhabited by the Moro people. In the late 1960s, the conflict between Moro and Christian communities escalated and peaked in the mid-1970s. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front, one of the biggest armed resistance groups, fielded some 30,000 armed fighters, and the Philippine military deployed up to 80% of its combat forces against them. Around 50,000 people were killed and there was huge destruction. Despite that, talks between the government and the Moros began in late 1976 and have continued on and off for decades, with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front as the biggest Muslim group. A deal was finally reached in 2014, paving the way for the new law.
So government found it more important to have this with the MILEC instead of spending billions of pesos in the purchase of weapons and ammunition, because to them, the war in Mindanao cannot be won by either side. Of course, we cannot win over government, especially on conventional warfare, but neither government can trust the MNLF and the MILF, especially when we resort to a non-conventional mode of fighting, which means guerrilla warfare.
The law signed by President Duterte would give the Moro people more control of their finances. 75% of the regional internal revenue collection would go to the Bangsamoro and 25% to the central government. There would be an 80-member parliament, and Islamic law would be incorporated into the region's justice system. But security would stay with the central government, meaning the Bangsamoro couldn't have their own military and police forces. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front would have to disband its army. Now people living in the areas of Mindanao covered by the agreement will get to vote on it in a referendum before the end of 2018. It could mean peace for a turbulent region, but would also not be the first agreement to fail.
Tor, or the Onion Router, is a browsing tool used to surf the web anonymously. As we've discussed in past episodes, there are many ways the internet can track us. By using our IP address, websites are able to use identifying information to target advertising and collect data about our browsing habits. So it's no surprise that journalists, activists, and privacy advocates have turned to Tor for a more anonymous browsing experience. In a normal internet connection, you are directly connected to the website you're trying to visit. This website and any other prying eyes can see who you are and that you're trying to access their server using your IP address. The Tor network, however, is made up of countless nodes or relay points that pass your data along using layers of encryption, hence the onion metaphor. Each node that your data passes through peels off another layer of encryption, showing the previous node's IP address as well as where it's being sent to. The last node that your data passes through is known as the exit node, and it peels off the final layer of encryption and then delivers your data to the intended dedicated server. The point of origin and the intermediary nodes are completely unknown. Besides browsing the internet, Tor users can utilize its hidden services to create private websites and messengers that can only be found using the Tor browser. These private sites, which are part of the dark web, are where pages like the internet black market Silk Road can be found. However, not all activity on Tor is for nefarious purposes. Anonymous internet usage can be important for journalists who are reaching out to sources, activists who live in countries that censor or block internet usage, and even law enforcement officers who use it for undercover operations. But nothing is perfect, and while onion routing makes it harder for hackers and spies to track your activities, it doesn't make it impossible. There are still ways attackers can view activity on the network and extract data from vulnerable entry and exit points, especially if Tor users aren't diligent. So should you use Tor to browse the internet? Well look, if you're a casual internet user and signing on to Facebook or social media, probably not, because you're putting your identifying information out there anyways.
But how can Islam, a peaceful faith, justify such brutality? This week, VOA released a series of reports we call Terror Unmasked, tracing Boko Haram's extremist origins and why clerics is on the face of terror. We warn you that parts of this report may be difficult to watch.
In Mardala, they bombed a Catholic church on Christmas Day. In Kano, a suicide attack killed 120 worshippers praying at a mosque. Then in 2014, an act that brought global condemnation, kidnapping 276 girls from a Chibok school, most of whom remain captive. Shekau, the group's leader, said the girls shouldn't have been in school. God instructed me to sell them. They are his properties and I will carry out his instructions. Ibrahim Muhammad Duguri, a leading scholar of Sunni Islam in Abuja, says such acts are absolutely forbidden.
Ba za a kashe tsofaffi ba, ba za a kashe yara ba, ba za a kashe mata ba, ba za a sare itatuwa ba masu amfani.
But the Boko Haram videos obtained by VOA show them flogging a boy, executing an old disabled man, and chopping off hands during tribunals, all in the name of Allah.
And for more on this chilling and hard-hitting portrait of evil, we are joined by one of the journalists who made this series possible. We welcome international broadcaster and managing editor of VOA's House of Service, our friend Ibrahim Ahmed. I thank you for joining us, and congratulations on this series. It's something else to watch, actually, and you learn all sorts of things from it. So it's called Terror Unmasked. Tell me about this series. How did it come to pass? How did you get this thing developed?
What has been a weapon for Boko Haram has been its ability to be a creative organization. Nobody has seen the faces of Boko Haram. Nobody knows anything about the Boko Haram leadership or membership. This is the first time that you see something that exposes Boko Haram. You see them in their own kind of environment, doing what they have been doing to subjugate
Doing
people.
what they don't want the rest of the world to know that they're doing, correct?
Exactly. They shot these videos ostensibly for propaganda purposes, but when they shot videos that show their faces, it's not for public consumption.
You got the uncut version. How did you get a hold of this video?
Well, VOA received the videos, about 400-something videos, more than 18 hours of video from some sources. And then VOA set up a group that was able to determine that those videos came from a laptop that was captured by the military during a raid in one of the Boko Haram camps. But those videos didn't come directly from the military, it came from a source.
So for those folks who can watch this on voanews.com, this would be the first time many people will be seeing some of this horrendous video.
It will be the first time, even for Nigerians.
For Nigerians especially. So tell me a little bit about, you managed to separate all this 18 hours of video into 4 essentially episodes. The first one is called Ruling by Fear, showing the tactics that Boko Haram uses to wield control over a population. So how does the group maintain loyalty and fealty to their cause?
They maintain it through fear, and we saw it in that first episode. They'll call all the people in a particular town or a village. Everybody has to come, whether a small kid or a big person. Everybody has to come to watch this trial, where they execute and beat people, where they punish them. And if they,
so people are living in fear, right?
People are living in absolute fear.
So the other one I saw, The Anatomy of an Attack, was fascinating in that it shows what happened after a failed attack and how Boko Haram tried to sort of save that situation. Tell our viewers about that.
Well, Anatomy of an Attack is the first time that we go behind the scene to see how Boko Haram planned their attacks and how they carry it out. But also we saw the frustration they get into when they were not able to succeed in one of their attacks.
And when they're frustrated, they cause even more harm, don't they?
They cause even more harm. They just kill people for nothing.
Ibrahim, by exposing some of these tactics that Boko Haram has used, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, this is to show the world why Boko Haram in 2014 was termed the deadliest terror organization, ahead of groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and others.
They're just one, and they seem to be expanding. And I guess what is needed would be sort of more reports, such as yours, Terror Unmasked, to sort of expose some of these tactics. Now, the first time many of us heard about Boko Haram was about 3 years ago, when we heard about the 267 girls who were kidnapped from Chibok.
From Chibok.
What has happened to those 267 girls? I understand some of them have been released, but what about the bulk of them? Are they?
The majority of them are still in Boko Haram captivity. We don't know how many are still alive, but most of them are still under Boko Haram control. And the Chibok girl gained worldwide.
It gained a lot of attention. Even the First Lady of the United States was putting memes up.
Bring back our girls. But this is only one of thousands or hundreds of instances where Boko Haram kidnapped people. There are thousands of people still under Boko Haram captivity.
We just got a lot of publicity for these girls because it happens to hit us right in the heart.
Yes.
Why is it so difficult, though, to recover some of these girls and return them back to their families? Why is it so hard?
It is because Boko Haram has been so creative, and because of the area where they are operating. The Nigerian military had some issues initially, although now they are getting the upper hand on Boko Haram.
Vi trodde vi fant trygg her, vi foreldre. Trygghet her, men det var ikke det for oss.
Nå kommer det masse regn i navn, men det jo vanntett. Så det gikk helt fint i natt.
This is Bano Rashid, filmed on Utøya Island enjoying summer camp. Only hours later, she would be killed along with 68 others. Her sister Lara would survive.
Nordmenn har skjønt at det ikke handler om svart eller hvitt, det handler om godt og ondt. Og dette var et ondt menneske uansett hvordan han ser ut.
Vi gikk gjennom masse, og så jeg går gjennom masse andre ting.
Hun hadde lyst til å bli journalist, eller advokat, eller jurist. Det fikk hun jo ikke blitt.
Altså, vi har opplevd mye krig, men krig mellom Iran og Irak, Golfkrigen, andre Golfkrigen, og så opprør kurdere. Men for Lara, hun har ikke opplevd noe krig. Hun var bare 3,5 år eller 4 år da vi flyttet til Norge. Men nå i 2011 hun opplevde Utøya. Og til og med den grusomme opplevelsen miste en nær familie. Hun var ikke bare storesøster, bestevenninne, storesøster, veileder for henne. Vi fikk beskjed onsdag, og så fredag var første begravelse. Det var hun.
Barnets begravelse, det var et veldig fint symbol om multikulturisme, som var en imam og en kvinnelig prest som de gikk sammen, og begge seremoni. Det betyr at vi kan bo sammen, og vi kan leve sammen. Vi aksepterer hverandre. Hver av oss kan bli stolt av sin ideologi eller sin kultur.
Hun brant veldig for internasjonale konflikter, og Kurdistan og Palestina og slike spørsmål. Og så brant hun veldig for kvinnekampen. Og Gro Harlem Brundtland var jo en av hennes store forbilder. Da hun var liten, jeg snakket om at Gro var den første kvinnelige statsministeren, og at hun skulle bli den første kvinnelige statsministeren med minoritetsbakgrunn. Og så skulle hun og Gro bli venner og henge sammen.
On the day of the Utøya massacre, Bano met her political idol, Gro Harlem Brundtland. Brundtland got off the island before the attack.
Men hva synes du om at Gro kommer da? Jeg synes det er skikkelig kult. Det er liksom, ja, altså Gro, altså alle bare, oi Gro. Altså vi snakker alltid om hva Gro har gjort for oss. Og for alle kvinner og alle, og vi snakker alltid om, ja Gro og alle bestemødrene våre. Det er derfor jeg står her nå liksom. Og så bare er hun her. Det er sånn.
Den er fra London 6 måneder før, eller 7 måneder før hendelsen. Hun var veldig glad i havet, sjø og båtliv og ønsket seg båt. Og den er på Nes og denne Oslofjorden også med en venninne og deres båt. Skolen har laget monument. De har tatt et stein fra Utøya. Ja, foran inngangen i skolen. De har laget den monumenten. Den er veldig fint. Og så sist på avslutning til 3. klasse, eller de som er ferdig med skolen, vi ble invitert av rektor. Etter avslutning, alle de andre gikk inn til kantinen eller gymsalen til å få vitnemål fra rektor. Og så jeg og Mustafa, jeg bestemte meg ikke å gå inn, og så Mustafa, skal vi gå inn? Nei, vi går ikke inn. Vi finner ikke Bano der. Bano er ikke der. Til å få, de roper ikke opp navnet til Bano. Og så Bano kommer ikke å gi oss klem. Vi måtte kjøre til graven hennes, og der satt jeg og gråt, og så fortalte henne hva jeg har opplevd nå, Bano. Du var ikke der, alle de andre var der. Det er vanskelig å kjenne det at hun er borte. Vi kommer ikke å oppleve det som vi har planlagt. Jeg savner Bano.
Armed assailants attacked an upscale hotel in Nairobi on January 15th. The Somali militant group Al-Shabaab told media organizations that it was behind the attack, which began around 3 p.m. local time. Witnesses reported gunshots and explosions at the Dusit D2 Hotel and an office park on Riverside Drive in the Westlands neighborhood.
regret to inform that today at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a group of unknown armed assailants attacked the Jusid complex in what we suspect could be a terror attack.
Footage from Kenyan TV broadcasters showed a heavily armed police presence on site, civilians fleeing the area, and cars on fire outside the hotel.
We heard blasts which were followed by gunshots, but we were not very sure what was happening by then.
So my instinct was that the explosion was so loud, so I said, gee, this must be a bomb. So I got up, I looked for my keys, I wanted to leave the building. But immediately after the explosion, there was sporadic shooting everywhere.
I had a big burst. Then a lot of shootout. Then I wrote messages to people and told them there is very heavy shootout. Before I could think, they were hitting doors just around me, around the place, and I thought they were hitting the kitchen. I kept on praying, and God has saved me, but I'm so terrified.
Officials confirmed at least 1 death and 15 injuries, and the U.S. State Department confirmed that 1 American was killed in the attack.
Let them come and kill me.
As night fell, armed forces continued to clear the building.
I can now report that we have secured all the buildings that had been affected by this event.
But witnesses still reported hearing occasional gunfire and explosions in the area. Kenya has been repeatedly attacked by the Al-Shabaab movement, which is based in neighboring Somalia. The attack at the hotel comes exactly 3 years after nearly 200 soldiers were killed in an attack on a Kenyan military camp in Somalia by Al-Shabaab. In 2015, nearly 150 people were killed when Al-Shabaab assailants stormed a university in northeastern Kenya. And in 2013, the militant group attacked Nairobi's Westgate Mall and killed 67 people.
Families scrambled out of war-ravaged Somalia, made their way to the friendly streets, good schools, and social services of Minneapolis. Why would dozens of young Somali men have left it all, returned to Somalia to fight with Al-Shabaab, one of Al-Qaeda's many vicious affiliates?
He lives in poverty. He lives in a single-home household. He doesn't get out. He steps out and tries to do something. He ends up in the backseat of the squad car. His mother doesn't want to hear that.
A growing gang problem, high unemployment among Somalis in Minneapolis have taken many opportunities away, according to local leaders. Bob Fletcher, a former sheriff here, says there's also an identity issue.
Most of these kids are torn between 2 cultures. You know, they're Americans, but they're not necessarily, they don't feel totally accepted as Americans. They know they have a Somali history. Many do not have a father.
Enter the Al-Shabaab recruiter. Some of them get to these young men over the internet. This video features an Al-Shabaab militant from Minneapolis who's since been killed.
If you guys only knew how much fun we have over here, this is the real Disneyland.
When the recruiters actually arrive here, they have an impact.
They tell them that they will go back to their own country that they have never seen, they dream about. They say it's a country where everybody's just like you. You can marry whoever you want to. Nobody will discriminate against you. You can find a better job. You can run an organization. You can be a leader. They make them leaders before they leave here. They give them titles.
And then once they get there, what happens to them?
Wow, that is a nightmare for them.
But the former sheriff says the tide turned in 2009. A suspected Al-Shabaab suicide bomber struck at a graduation ceremony in Somalia, killing nearly 24 innocents, an event many in Minneapolis recoiled from.
Al-Shabaab's appeal is really waning. I mean, what are you going back to at this point? I mean, you're going back to a life of almost certain death.
More and more Somalis in this town are aware of that, and as a result, Fletcher says there have been only 5 confirmed cases since 2009 of young Somali men actually going back to their homeland, back to that violence, and no cases, he says, since July of last year, Wolf.
Right after 9/11, the country showed a lot of grit. We really did come back.
For the last 9 days, the entire world has seen for itself the state of our union, and it is strong.
But democracies are very good at going after yesterday's threats and yesterday's wars and not in dealing with long-term threats that haven't made the headlines yet. A not so obvious threat that I identify in the article is the threat of a so-called dirty bomb. The reason it's such an insidious threat is that a dirty bomb is actually all about fear. You take some radiological material that you can get in a hospital and mix it with a conventional bomb, just any kind of conventional explosive, and you set it off in, God forbid, the center of Washington. The radiation levels will be such that they're the equivalent of a Superfund site. It'll paralyze that whole community. There really isn't a great defense against a dirty bomb because explosive material is available, and unfortunately the security precautions being taken for even this radiological material are not yet strong enough. This is going to happen sooner or later. Unlike a lot of things that are really scary, there is something we can do about it. The best defense is simply arming people with the facts beforehand. If you release that kind of a device near the Library of Congress in Washington, the radiation levels in the District of Columbia would increase by enough that one person per 10,000 people over the next 10 years would die of cancer, which sounds pretty horrible. Obviously, we should evacuate Washington. We'll do the math. One person dying for each of 10,000 people in a city of 500,000 people is 50 people dying. Now, you could save 50 people from dying of cancer if you just went into an office building on K Street and told people to quit smoking. If I say Superfund site, that sounds awful, we should get out of town. If I say 50 people and put it in perspective, it's not. The problem is no one, not in the Bush administration or President Bush, not in the Obama administration or President Obama, has ever had a discussion with the American people like the one I just tried to have with you, where you explain that a dirty bomb sounds really scary, but it doesn't kill very many people. If you try to have that discussion after the bomb goes off, and the president got on, it's the same as if, 50 more people got cancer out of the whole city of Washington, don't worry about it. Imagine what Donald Trump would do with that. Imagine what any candidate would do. Say, you're soft-pedaling terrorism, you're weak, you're throwing in the towel, we've got to clear out of Washington. We can spare no life. We must do this. What this illustrates is that in a democracy, we react even to things as serious as, the threat of terror based on what's in the headlines and based on what people are talking about. After the bomb goes off, there'll be a presidential commission saying, why weren't we doing this? We knew this. And the presidential commission will recommend that we do this, this, and that, and we will instantly do it. And then we'll ignore some other threat.